Welcome, everybody. This is the first of a series that we're going to be starting. It's going to run in conjunction with our calendar of themes that we run every month. The first one we're running is mindset, and this is where we've got such a range of experts in our community, and we really feel like we want to be able to bring them more to the front and share their expertise and experience with others. So being the first month is mindset, which is very apt for January because a lot of people are thinking, if they haven't already, what are they planning to do this year? What are their goals and their strategies? And a huge part of that is about setting, the right mindset. So when I thought mindset, the first person that came to mind was like Joe Pane. That's who we want to talk to. And so I'm really pleased to introduce you to Joe Pane. If you don't know who Joe Pane is, he is the creator of the emotional fitness formula, which ultimately is how to master or mastering uncertainty. And so Joe has a huge amount of experience. He comes with a wealth of degrees in psychology, sociology. He is an expert in human behavior, which I find fascinating. And that's kind of where I'll be leading into the first couple of questions. And he's been doing this for a while now, since about 2006, I believe. Is that right? Yep. So Joe is the absolute best person to be talking on this subject. So I'm really keen. We know that I know this is a global community that we're talking to here, and this applies to wherever you are around the world. But we do know that in parts of Australia where we're based, that, some of our areas of our community have had a really challenging few weeks with natural disasters with the weather. And so there is an element there, whereas I feel like people are probably struggling a little bit also with mindset and are really wanting to maybe need a little bit of support and help in how to really retune that and get into the right headspace. So without further ado, we're gonna start off. And I guess the first question I have, Joe, is the decision to understand human behavior. I find that fascinating. What is it that got you into that?
Well, confusion. So I was in a degree that was applied chemistry and food science and technology,
Uh-huh.
and I was working in a lab one night, and I hated it. I was depressed, and this person, one of my colleagues at the time, said to me, "You don't belong here." And I said, "Yeah, that's pretty obvious. I just don't know where I belong though. Like, I leave here, where do I go?"
Yeah.
And this person said to me something really, really simple. He said, "You're not into things, you're into people." I said, "Yes."
Mm.
It's amazing how one simple insight from someone can change the trajectory of your life. So, and then
Yeah.
from there, I just went and searched for where I could go and do psychology and sociology, or one or the other, preferably psychology. And long and the short of it is, a year later, I transferred into a different course with a different uni, and got stuck into there. I've always just been curious about just how people experience their experience of life. It was like an innate sort of curiosity that I didn't realize was there until I experienced the opposite, which was working in a lab making chips. So nothing wrong with that. If it floats your
Yeah.
boat, phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah.
but it just didn't float my boat. So.
Fascinating. And so then how did that transform into the program that you've created and, wanting to help people master uncertainty?
I found that over the years, that for whatever the reasons are, and there's a plethora of reasons, most people have a defensive reaction to uncertainty. And it's been shown in the realm of mental illnesses and emotional illnesses, if you like. That doesn't really make sense, emotional illness, but even in the realm of mental illnesses, that one of the significant contributing factors to people experiencing anxiety and depression is a very poor, unresourceful, dysfunctional relationship with uncertainty, or in other words, a defensive reaction to it.
Mm.
And so when I started my business back in 2006, I went from being a full-time employee for 10 years in various jobs into starting my own business. And I remember experiencing the dilemma of leaving the secure world of a prison for me, it was a prison,
Mm.
hamster wheel sort of lifestyle, to the open forest where I can go wherever I want, the dilemma was, well, where do I go? I'm now responsible for where the next dollar's coming from. And I've got, well, at that stage, Sylvana's my wife, we had no kids, but mortgage and kids were on the radar.
Yeah.
So and I navigated that uncertainty somehow. And I didn't know how I did it. And then I also, and I'll explain how I did it in a moment because I know now, but and then before that, I worked in sales for 7 years in real estate, where my old employer, for my first 15 months, he just said, if you want to work here, you need to prove that you want to work here. And one of the ways that you do that is you go out into the street and you door knock cold, create new relationships, and build your database there, because that's your future if you want to spend a long time rather than just a bit of a short time here. So for 15 months, I something like that, I'll say 15 months, give or take, I spent almost every day on the street or in the office. It was too hot, I'd be on the phone making cold calls. So I was facing like micro hits, like intense hits of uncertainty, because every time I went to knock on a door, and believe you me, Tanya, I met some, let's just say some fascinating people. I met some beautiful people, but I met some really interesting characters, my God. And I didn't know what was coming behind the next door. And I could tell you many, many stories there, but we haven't got time for that here. But so that was my first introduction into uncertainty. And then starting my own business, that kind of felt almost easier in a way, because I'd been out doing that cold calling. And then as my coaching business and my training business developed and evolved, I thought, well, what if I could put a framework around how we can improve this single most psychological relationship, the most important psychological relationship we could have, which is with uncertainty. Because this is like the way that we view uncertainty, to me, is like a failure point. I don't have the language. How do I say it? It's a vulnerable failure point where our lives can be really crap if we don't understand how uncertainty actually works and how we can navigate it better.
Interesting. So I will make mention that at the end of this, we're going to be talking a little bit about a program that Joe is going to be running in early February, which I think I've already signed up for. And I feel like that's, having looked into it and knowing about you and what you do, it's something that I feel like personally I can get a huge amount of value for. So I'm really keen that we share that with our community as well. So stay, you'll read in the comments, you'll hear at the end of this what that's all about, but definitely stay on the line to listen to that. So when framing back into our theme, mindset. So, when you think of the word mindset and you put that in the context of a small business owner, what sort of comes to mind for you?
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Well, let's just backdrop. To answer that question, we need to understand the backdrop, the behind the scenes. So what we need to appreciate here is that all we have is our mind. You can't experience the reality outside of it. That's all we have. Reality, and I don't want to minimize our experience of reality, but the fact is, the human behavioral fact is that reality is nothing more than a psychological construct, which is a fancy way of saying it's a fabricated experience of reality. Now that sounds really like, have you been drinking a couple of wines? Like, what are you talking about? Fabricated, like the tree's there, man. I'm telling you, like, what are you talking about? Fabricated. It's what the tree means. It's what that smile, your beautiful smile, what it means to me. Or if you frowned at me, what does it mean to me? Or I experienced rejection out in the field. What does it mean to me? And we are in charge of that. Our perception. So in other words, in this conversation, I would love for our listeners to use the word perception and mind interchangeably, because we're not completely in charge of our perception, but we've got a big say in it. Not a complete say, but a significant say in it. So all we have is our mind. And in fact, the way that we relate to anything, from our historical narrative, our story that we've been telling ourselves about it, our interpretation of the past, our past is nothing more than an interpretation of what it would make it mean. The current challenges that we are facing in our businesses, whatever they might be, it's it's the narrative that we're telling ourselves. I'll drill into that more in a moment. And the way that we see 2024, 2025 and beyond is a narrative that we're telling ourselves. So it's all fabricated. That's what I mean by fabrication. It's all manufactured by our ego, by our mind. And so what's really, really important to realize about this is that one of the how do I say this? So mind and a branch. So if mind is the tree, a massive branch that comes off mind is our attitude. And meaning is a big one too, but attitude is a big branch too. So we've all decided at some point to start our own businesses, our own consultancy, our own whatever business it is. And we need to understand that the moment we make a decision like that, we're going to be exposing ourselves and introducing into our experience and the next level problem, because whenever a problem, challenge, pressure, stress, whatever you want to call it, we'll just call it problem for the sake of this conversation. Whenever a problem comes, the worst thing you could do as a business owner is to do the metaphorical or physical eye roll and go, oh my God, here we go again. What are you doing? Like, you're in business. You're going to have problems. You're going to have a problem with staff. You're going to have a problem with the market or something, or your marketing or whatever it's going to be. Those problems are there. To live a life, and this is the thing with mind, it's fascinating, is there are certain things that we need to accept, and that is that we will always have problems. In fact, we need problems. A problem is designed to help us. I'll say it like this. A problem is designed to prepare us for the next stage of our life. Because if you think about it, Tanya, if you are like, look at your beautiful self with your wonderful, wonderful boy. Like, think of yourself, Tanya, pre-motherhood. And now here we are, almost 2 complete years post-motherhood. Well, post-motherhood meaning, post-birth. The difference between who you are as a person. I dare say all of the problems that your beautiful boy, high quality problems, and sometimes difficult problems, have presented to your psychological landscape and your spiritual and emotional landscape has grown you into a woman that you otherwise would not have become if it wasn't for his arrival 2 years ago. And business is the same. What do you mean, Joe? It's the same as giving birth? Well, no, it's not. But it's psychologically, it's the same. Psychologically, it's the same. Because if you want to grow your business, you can only get there by growing through your problems. Without those problems, you can't grow into the next version of you to handle the next level of your business. So in other words, if you're looking to expand, leverage, delegate powerfully, building a team now, or whatever the challenge is, the only way you can learn how to, for example, build a team is to build a team. The only way you can learn to swim is by getting into the pool. The only way you can learn how to walk is to walk. So this is an important attitude when it comes to our mind in business, because the moment we start becoming unresourceful, meaning we start to now blame the problem for why we are in this dilemma or situation, well, now you're using your mind against yourself versus using your mind for yourself, which means for others automatically. And I think that's really, really important that we understand that there is no such thing as a conversation when one day you're sitting with a friend and you arrive and you say, gee, our problems are now over. It's like, no, they're not. The flavor of the problem changes. So I think the important message out of all of that, the most important part of that, is that every problem serves a purpose. I'll say it differently. Every problem serves a purpose to prepare you for the next level of you and your business. And as a man, as a woman, as a human being, as a business owner, whatever your identity is, it's preparing you for the next level of how you see your life going. And without problems, you wouldn't be able to handle the next level. It's like a game, because it is a game. It's like, imagine, Tanya, if you went and spent $10,000 on a very fancy digital game, right? That was graphically brilliant. And yet it was easy. And there was, and like, you just, like, it was easy and you mastered it in the first 25 minutes. And then you're like, well, where's the next level? Like, oh, no, there's no level. This is it. Like,
Yeah.
I spent 10 grand on 25 minutes. It's like, I want level, I want problem. So
Yeah.
do you want the problem? Do you get
Yeah.
my point? So
Absolutely. And something comes to mind when you were talking about that. I think Mark Manson, the author of the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a, said, you know,
I was
things.
wondering whether you were going to say the F word.
Yeah, no, I thought, well, maybe I won't. For the first episode, maybe not.
Love it.
But I think he said something along the lines of, the secret to a happy life or a successful life is swapping one problem for a smaller one. As long as you're swapping problems, which you're always going to have them, but as long as they're getting, smaller, then it means you're on a good trajectory. If you're swapping smaller problems for bigger ones, then, rethink about what's happening there. But that's fascinating. And
Well,
the
to
other
add to
thing,
that, Tanya, to
yeah,
add
go
to
for
that
it.
thought right there, I
Yeah.
think it's more about making sure that your next problem is different to the previous problem, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think psychologically speaking, the biggest problem you can have is where in 2024, you're still
Mm.
dealing with the same shit that you were dealing with in, say, 2021 or 2020 or 2018 or 2022, whatever year.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't show progress. That shows massive procrastination, which is a low quality problem versus a
Yeah.
high quality problem. High quality problem helps you grow. A
Yeah.
low quality problem keeps you stuck where you are.
So let's say then on that, I can think of a range of things that I'm still combating now in my life that I would say that I was a year or two or three ago. And you're absolutely right when you say it's about procrastination and avoidance. It's like I'll deal with that another day. So there might be others out there also sitting in a place of that's an issue for them. What are your thoughts around how to work through that? If you find that you're constantly coming up against the same things and going, oh, here I am again.
Yeah. A couple of things. First of all, it comes down to responsibility. So making a conscious decision as to how much responsibility you want to take for that particular issue or whatever's
Mm.
going on.
Mm-hmm.
Second part to that is having an awareness that if you keep avoiding the responsibility or avoid embracing it, there's only a certain level that you can tolerate of that particular issue. So it'll get to a point where that problem will envelop you and take you away energetically, emotionally, spiritually from the things that matter in your life. That's what it'll do, whatever it is. And so it's about responsibility and embracing it. Now, it's easy for me to sit here in a safe environment and say, hey, embrace responsibility. But
Yeah.
hey, what has taken you and I to where we are today, whether it's through parenthood or whether it's through businesshood, whether it's through personhood, whatever it is responsibility. If we've been more irresponsible than responsible, we wouldn't be here. It's as simple as that. So it's realizing that, well, if I don't embrace this particular issue, it's going to slowly grow to a point where it will envelop areas of my life that matter to me, and whatever that is.
Yeah, and it's on the word responsible is so apt because when you break that word down, responsibility, it talks about your response and then there's able, and it means your ability to respond. So if you look at it that way, it's not just a responsibility of feeling like it's a burden I have to take on and I have to be responsible, but actually it's saying you have the ability to respond, you have the ability to action and do something different. I really like that.
100%. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Mm.
So there was something that you said, I know this is going back, but it just popped out to me and I'm not sure whether you've covered it already, but you talked about one thing you wanted us as the listeners to this to take on is the mind and the perception and to use them interchangeably. So what do you mean by that and how do we do that?
Yeah. So we can't experience anything outside the mind. We can't. Unless you go on drugs or do other things that are extraordinary. I'm talking about your average everyday experience of living a responsible life, right?
Yeah.
So you can't experience anything. Perception is a filter that cannot be evaded, escaped, or gone around. Everything, all of the data of your experience is streaming in through these filters of perception. And then we get to decide on a certain level what that actually means. So perception, another way of saying it is perception is all of our ego needs, all of our complete experience of everything is all streaming in through there. And if you think of a paralleling metaphor, a TV screen that's streaming in, all the different streaming stations. You on the TV, you can't watch all of the shows on Netflix, let alone at once, let alone all of the shows on Netflix at once and all of the shows on Stan at once, etc., etc., etc. You just cannot. It's just the data is grossly overwhelming. I mean, trying to choose what movie you're going to watch on Netflix can be ridiculously overwhelming.
Yeah.
So psychologically, we're the same. So we can only tune into one stream at a time. And so our mind, which is the psychological construct, which is our reality, more accurately said, Tanya, it's not reality, it's our experience of reality. That's what that's what life is. And we get to be the meaning maker and the attitude creator behind what that perception means. And so one of the things in the emotional fitness work that I talk about is the power of thought trains, which is the first thought train you consciously choose to catch in the morning. So, because we wake up blank every morning, our consciousness is literally reset like an ocean beach is reset organically, naturally every morning. All the footprints from the previous day and the sand castles and everything have disappeared, and this beach is reset, clean, ready to go for a brand new day. Our conscious mind is exactly the same. And so we have to be the controller. That's poor word choice, but for the sake of this conversation, we have to be the controller or the choice maker of what thought train we choose to catch. So I'll give you an example. This morning, I'm just at the end of one of the books I'm reading, and I was talking about a topic that this particular topic within the book, press my buttons. And it was my first thought train for the day, which then, of course, if your thought train's heading toward the forest and not, I don't know, the park, you're going to have a very different experience of your morning versus heading toward the park, metaphorically. And so this chunk of content, press my buttons, which then led to another thought and another thought and another thought. And I'm on my way to my running group, and I'm realizing as I'm driving toward my running group every Friday, which is made up of like 30 people running, and it's just so much fun. That I didn't enjoy this morning's run because I had this thought train psychologically going through me. And so because I was surprised that this particular topic was broached in this particular book in that way. And I thought, anyway, the whole story is that you and I have got, this is where we've got control over our perception, Tanya, is in the mornings, we can have a little mini ritual or a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Habits. What's the word I'm looking for? Sorry?
Routine.
Routine. Thank you so much. Such a simple word that I just didn't remember. Where we go, okay, so for some people it's meditation. For some people it's reading certain books. I just didn't know that this particular book had this particular topic. But anyway, the point I'm making is that I often will consciously choose which books or which topic of book or whatever I'll read in the morning, or, I'll do my emails last, like later in the morning, or, I certainly don't hop onto mainstream media first thing in the morning. Because now the powers that be are in control of my mind. I mean, and that might sound like an exaggeration, but it's not, because your thought trains, you catch the train that you hop, that rail that you catch, you're on it now, right? So I think that's really, really important, because that sets up the way that you feel, and the way that we feel, our emotions completely flavor the streaming of experience, the perception, the mind. So to a reasonably significant degree, we are in control of that perception. And quite often what happens is, if a business owner is not managing a problem well or a challenge well, and not managing it in a resourceful way, then this can affect, obviously, the way they feel, which affects their perception, which affects their mind, which affects the attitude across the board. And if this is done on repeat, it's not going to be looking good for the near future for that particular business.
And the ripple effect of that is also, it goes beyond the individual, doesn't it? It goes to the team, the customers, everyone, whether it's consciously or subconsciously understood, that does translate outward. So
100%.
it's a perfect time to move on to now, like, what are the actions or the things that someone can do if they find themselves caught on one of these trains that they don't want to be on, or just in a bad way? Like, what can they do?
Yeah. So on a basic level, it's setting up your environment. So in the morning, you're setting yourself up psychologically well for the day. Being whatever ritual or routine that we just discussed. There's that part. I think the other part of this is spending time in getting clear on what matters in your life. So in other words, like so in the emotional fitness formula, there are like five principles. One of them is values. And a value, I personally define a value as our emotional compass. Our emotional compass, it guides us toward realizing or bringing into our reality our deepest desires, whatever those deepest desires are, whether they're physical desires like running or swimming or whatever the physical exercise, whether it's a creative desire, because we've all got different sort of desires, right? And so this matters in the backdrop or the landscape of our psychological landscape, because what this means is that when we are in touch with activities or experiences or relationships that completely align to our values, our emotional compass, we feel pretty good. And what this then does is it actually adds positively, massively, to our perspective on life. And it's really important. This is an important conversation because you want to have a clean and healthy perspective, because during times of uncertainty, when you're in the middle of a problem, a challenge, an issue, is you need a strong, clean perspective to lean on so you can see more clearly, because often a problem is in a micro drama of that moment or that day. And how often I'm sure you've been told, you got to get things into perspective sometimes, Tanya, or whatever. I've been told that in the past. I'm sure at some stage in your life you've been told. So we need to then see the purview of the situation from up high, or whatever the metaphor is, up high, which is our perspective. Now, how to build, because the question I often get asked is that people often say, "Oh, that's great, but how do you get a clean and healthy perspective?" It's learning how, or embracing the choice to instantly access gratitude and appreciation, which then circles all the way back to the thought train business, because there's always something we can be grateful and appreciative of. Always. I'll give you an example, Tanya, and this is going to sound a little bit dicky, but I'll just share it anyway, if that's all right. Is that, I've been flying with Virgin for a long time, and I was a platinum member for many, many years, and then with COVID and all the rest, they gave me platinum for another year, and then most of my trainings are on Zoom, so it's downgraded to gold. That's fine. Still got lounge access and all the rest of it. And anyway, we just recently took a family trip to Melbourne, and the Jetstar prices were massively cheaper to travel with 4 people than Virgin. So I went with that for the first time in I don't know, 18 years of being in business. First time I've gone to Jetstar. And the trip to Melbourne was pretty good. It was just normal. The trip back was hell. Like, we were in the basement of Melbourne Airport with all of these people, like thousands of people trying to siphon people into their different little parts where they got to go and catch their plane. Our plane was delayed, and we were standing in the middle of this, like shoulder to shoulder. You couldn't even sit down for about an hour. I know that there's bigger problems in the world. I realize this. I'm aware of what I'm saying, but I'm standing there with my wife and my sons, and we're in this heat, and we were there for an hour. The plane was delayed. There was this, every announcement was just more pain. And I said to my wife, I took that Virgin Lounge for granted. I was so used to it for so many years that I never even appreciated it. To me, it was just normal. This is what you do. And now that I've experienced the contrast, it just reconnected me to a healthy level of gratitude and appreciation for that. Now, the thing is, we can do this process with everything in our lives. And it's impossible to have a clean and healthy perspective without gratitude and appreciation for something or someone or some people or things. And I think that's really, really important, because ultimately emotional fitness is about transforming our relationship with uncertainty. The preparedness for the next problem that comes, the next issue that comes in our business or in our personal lives. So circling back to your question, mind, perception, it's one thing pretty much. Our perception is influenced significantly by the meaning that we give things. Our perception is massively flavored by the emotions that we feel. Our emotions are set by thought trains. We can only stream one channel at a time, psychologically speaking, just like on TV or a radio station. So choose wisely which station you want to stream, and that's set up with thought trains in the morning. And on a bigger picture level, we need to have a perspective to lean on. There's more to it than this, but within the short time that we have, perspective is something that's really important to have as a very healthy, clean, robust thing that you can lean on in times of dark tunnels. And there's other things you can lean on as well, but that's one way of explaining it.
Yep. That's a really good summary of, I think, what we've discussed. And I suppose my last question would just be, if you could sum that all up into one key takeaway from someone that's watched this, what would you say would be the biggest thing that they can do to affect their mindset more positively?
Remember that uncertainty is the prerequisite, the precursory seed to all growth. And this is it's a function of life. And without growth, we die. Like, there's nothing in between. Nothing stays still. It's either expanding or shrinking. Our lungs breathe out, breathe in. Nature's growing or dying. Markets, economies, businesses are either expanding or shrinking. Nothing stays still for very long. But the way that things grow is without change, without uncertainty, without those problems, you can't grow. Remember, growth is becoming something unfamiliar. It's becoming an unfamiliar that then becomes familiar. And most people, I'm going to say this, it's going to sound disrespectful, but it's not. I'm saying this from a loving space, but it makes me laugh when people, including myself, we get scared of the unfamiliar when, well, that's the next version of you waiting for you to grow up. So embrace it. Why be scared of it? Like, how'd you get to this part? You have to be scared of this one. And, so that's the parting comment there, that uncertainty is a precursor to all growth. And it's a requirement of life.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And in my own context, that rings so true. And it's when you have a child and you see them growing and, taking on new challenges, they do so without that filter of fear, because without that, that's how they're able to grow and learn to walk and learn to talk. If they were working with this filter of fear and preventing themselves from taking that step, they would never evolve. So it's very real when you see that happening at that young age, but it's happening to us right now as adults and at all aspects of our life. So really great. Thank you. As I said, I really wanted to make sure that we touch upon the program that you're going to be running in early February. I know it's a 3-part training on the 2nd and the 6th and the 8th of February. And so tell us a little bit more about that. What is it that it's about?
It's called the 2024 Uncertainty Mastery Bootcamp. So we ran our first one. Our first Uncertainty Mastery Bootcamp was back in July 2023, which was just incredibly popular. It was just incredible. It was just a wonderful offering just to the public, because it's online and it's free. So it's available to everyone. It's coming up on February the 2nd, and each of the parts are a 1 hour each. But so what it is the first part focuses on February the 2nd, focuses on you personally. So not you, Tanya, but you as an individual. So in other words, your personal relationship with uncertainty and how you can transform that. The second part on February the 6th, that training focuses on what you're learning about uncertainty is how to translate that for, and two, the people that you care about and love the most in this world.
Mm,
So your personal loved ones, and
mm,
also how you can transform your team's relationship with uncertainty, your client or customer experience relationship with uncertainty. So in other
yeah.
words, the second session is about others and about how you can impact somebody else through a simple conversation, utilizing some of the frameworks from emotional fitness. And the third and final component is about for people who really want to, so trainers, consultants, and leaders, people who are
Yeah.
responsible for other people. You can actually become accredited in emotional fitness and learn about how, what the actual emotional fitness formula actually is and how it actually works out in the field. So that's a free event, and people can also opt in for a VIP experience as well, which is like um, I think it's by memory just under $40, 37, $38.
Yeah.
And what that means is at the end of those 3 sessions, they can come to a 1 hour Q&A that's intimate and private, where they can ask me anything that they want on the topic of uncertainty and emotional fitness. And yeah, that was fun last time I did that. It was just free
Nice.
range and organic. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm there. I looked at the VIP. It looks phenomenal value for what you get. So I think, opt in for that and to have more time with you as well. And after something which I think is going to just open up people's minds and make them think differently. So the opportunity to ask you questions about that, I'm sure are going to be extremely valuable.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you
Tony.
for your time. I really fascinating. I could talk to you all day. So, but I said this to you the first time I met you. I think it's something I'm very passionate about, and I love what you do. And so thank you so much for giving us your time and your expertise to everyone.
Thanks, Tanya. I appreciate you inviting me.
All good.